prices aren't high enough already, now they want to gouge you even more.
Take Chick-fil-A. They raise their prices to account for money they lost.
Do you believe the last cheap meal in America might vanish next month? That $5 combo you used to grab after a long shift is now quietly creeping toward $12. The numbers don't lie. Since 2022, restaurant prices have jumped more than 22%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And now, Technomic warns that at least 15 of the biggest names in American dining, McDonald's, Subway, Burger King, are preparing to raise prices again in the next 30 days. Some aren't just increasing prices, they're doubling them. But let's be honest, this isn't just inflation. It's the quiet disappearance of the last affordable meal and the last promise that no matter how broke you were, there would still be something ready for you, and when the cheapest food in the country becomes unaffordable. The question isn't what's for dinner, but who gets to eat. This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. And today we will reveal 15 fast food chains that are raising prices and shrinking portions in the months ahead in 2025. Number 1. Applebee's. What do you do when the one place that always feels within reach quietly closes its doors to you? When the booth that once held your anniversary toast, your kid's graduation burger, or just a midweek sigh of relief now comes with a price tag that stings for decades. Applebee's was the everyman's oasis. Not glamorous, not gourmet, just right. A place where $20 stretched into something more than food. 2 entrees, 1 appetizer, and the soft comfort of being served. The 2 for $20 wasn't just a deal, it was dignity on a plate, wrapped in mozzarella sticks and smothered in bourbon glaze. But now, that same meal floats between $28 and $32. Toss in a modest drink and a tip. And suddenly you're staring at $50. A casual dinner out has turned into a financial decision. Again. The shift didn't happen overnight. Executive briefings speak of cost inflation, supply chain volatility, and investment in experience modernization. That means touchscreens instead of servers, trendy lighting, louder music, and imported beef from increasingly distant ports. It all sounds impressive until you realize who's been quietly priced out. The very people who built Applebee's into a cultural cornerstone: retired factory workers, single moms, service members on leave have been ghosted by the brand they once propped up. It's not that they stopped caring. They just can't pay anymore. Not for the new floors, not for the high-tech ordering kiosks, and certainly not for a meal that used to cost half as much with twice the heart. Today, Applebee's is drifting, not toward luxury, but toward vacancy. Fewer customers, quieter tables, smiles stretched thin over thinning crowds. You feel it when you walk in the sense that this place, once made for you, no longer remembers your name. If the booth where everyday people once celebrated life's small victories now feels out of reach, where do we go next? Number 2, Burger King. Picture this: the backup plan, the budget-friendly option, the burger you grabbed when the paycheck barely covered gas, now staring back at you with a price tag that makes your heart sink. Burger King, for millions of Americans, used to be the quiet reassurance that no matter how tight things got, there was still something warm, filling, and affordable just down the road. The 2 Whoppers for $5 deal wasn't a gimmick, it was a symbol. A way to say yes to your kid without checking your bank balance. A way to feed 2 mouths for the price of 1. A way to feel like you still had choices. But that version of Burger King has all but disappeared in 2025, depending on where you live. A single Whopper combo now runs between $11.75 to nearly $14, and it's only climbing. Industry analysis from Technomic confirms the chain is bracing for another price increase of 8 to 11% this year. Executives cite rising ingredient costs, minimum wage pressures, and a sweeping redesign of stores, shiny new menus, sleek counters, automated ordering systems. It all looks impressive until you can't afford to eat there anymore. For working-class families, Burger King was once a breath of relief after a long day. Now, it's become a source of quiet guilt. A mother in Texas recently shared her story. Her son brought home a good report card and asked for a Whopper meal. She tapped the kiosk. $13.89. No coupon, no deal. She looked at him and said, "We've got something even better at home." But her voice trembled, and her son understood. That moment when love had to stretch too far, that's the real loss. Burger King is no longer the backup. It's the reminder that even the lowest rungs on the ladder are being pulled up behind us. And what's left for everyday Americans? When even the once affordable burger is now behind glass, maybe Applebee's was just the beginning. But if Burger King is no longer a safety net, how many more chains will quietly slip away before we notice they're gone? Number 3, Subway. Imagine walking into a place for nothing more than a modest sandwich, something warm, filled with vegetables, and maybe a bit of turkey, and realizing that even this small comfort is slipping out of reach. For years, Subway stood as a rare middle ground. It wasn't fried, it wasn't fancy, it was fast, relatively healthy, and affordable. The $5 footlong wasn't just marketing, it was a promise whispered into the lives of everyday people that you still had a say in what you ate, and that your wallet didn't have to take the hit. That promise has been quietly broken. As of 2025, that once simple footlong now ranges between $9.95 to $13.25, depending on your zip code. Since the company's ownership changed hands in 2023, Subway has shifted toward region-based pricing. Their reasoning: higher costs of importing vegetables, more expensive refrigeration, rising electricity bills, and investments in app-based ordering systems and upgraded breads. And there's more coming. Internal forecasts hint at another price increase of 10 to 12% within the next 6 months. But this isn't just about the price of a sandwich, it's about what's being lost in the quiet. Subway was the in-between place, the soft landing spot between greasy burgers and overpriced salads. For older Americans on fixed incomes, students with little more than change in their pockets, and night shift workers looking for something that wouldn't upset their stomachs, it was a familiar friend. Now, they're stepping away. A trucker in Iowa, once loyal to Subway on every long haul, now packs sandwiches from home and drives past in silence. Retirees who used to look forward to a tuna sub after a pharmacy run now skip the stop. Office workers watch the price flash on the digital kiosk, then eat last night's leftovers instead. Subway's polished remodels and app-exclusive deals seem designed for a new kind of customer, one with extra time, reliable internet, and reward points to burn. But what about the rest of us? What about the ones who just wanted a little warmth and choice wrapped in paper when even a sandwich becomes a luxury? What does that say about where we're heading? Because what's disappearing isn't just affordability, it's agency. Number 4, McDonald's. Think back to when a $5 bill meant something, a Big Mac combo, a moment of rest, maybe even a small treat for your kid after a long week. No apps, no fine print, no shame. Just a warm burger, salty fries, and the hum of something familiar. McDonald's wasn't just a restaurant, it was a constant. A quiet reassurance that even when the rent was late or the gas tank was low, you could still afford a bite that tasted like home. That reassurance has shattered. As of summer 2025, that same Big Mac combo costs between $10.89 to over $13, depending on where you live. According to Forbes, McDonald's prices have surged nearly 40% between 2019 and 2024, and it's not done. With new labor laws like California's $20 minimum wage for fast food workers now live, economists are bracing for another 10 to 15% nationwide increase before the season ends. Of course, price hikes don't happen in a vacuum. Behind the counter, beef costs have skyrocketed, long-haul transport expenses have ballooned, and store managers are fighting to keep tired teams afloat. Supply chains are buckling quietly, farmers, truckers, warehouse staff, all part of a machine that's no longer running clean. And somewhere in the noise of corporate earnings calls and digital upgrades, the working class customer is being quietly cut out. The damage isn't loud, but it's everywhere. A family of 4 now pays almost $50 for a quick McDonald's meal. Seniors who once sipped dollar coffee while chatting with old friends now linger outside, weighing the cost of conversation. Parents who used to promise happy meals are breaking that promise with an apology and a sandwich from home. These aren't isolated stories. They are warning signs written not in headlines, but in silence. One retired man in Illinois once said it best: "I didn't come for the burger. I came because McDonald's still made me feel like I mattered." That quiet feeling of belonging, of being part of something, no matter how small, is now fading. If the golden arches, once America's cheapest comfort, are now pricing out the very people who made them iconic. What future is left for those just looking for a hot meal and a place to sit? Number 5. KFC. Imagine standing in front of a place that once symbolized warmth, laughter, and togetherness and realizing you can no longer afford to walk in, not because you've changed, but because it has. For decades, that red and white KFC bucket wasn't just about chicken, it was about reward, about giving your family something to smile about after a week of scraping by. In 2005, 8 pieces cost around $10, a meal that filled bellies and rooms with conversation. Today, that same bucket can set you back $26.90, and it's not stopping there. According to CNN Business, KFC prices have risen over 65% since 2015, and experts predict another 8 to 10% increase by the end of quarter 3. 2025. The reasons trickle down like grease on paper, rising oil and poultry costs, insurance premiums, and corporate efforts to chase higher margin markets. But what's being left behind everyday families? Seniors on fixed incomes, working parents counting coins instead of calories. What was once a treat at the end of a long month has become a hard decision. $30 for 2 meals. That's gas money. That's groceries. That's choosing between hot food tonight or a stocked pantry for 3 days. It's not a meal anymore, it's a sacrifice. All across America, the scene repeats. Families park outside KFC, checking menus through the window, remembering the times when they laughed over biscuit crumbs and chicken bones. Now they count heads, prices, and walk away inside the stores. Things have changed too. Fewer workers, shorter hours, more empty tables. Most employees, students, retirees, single moms are watching their shifts disappear. And the customers who once showed up like clockwork, they're skipping it altogether. Not because they've given up, but because the place they trusted gave up on them first. This isn't about craving fried food. It's about craving something that felt earned, something hot, something shared, something that made all the hard parts of the month melt away for just a while. If KFC disappears, what takes its place? Plastic-wrapped frozen meals, lukewarm noodles in silence, or worse, a generation that never learns what it feels like to sit around a greasy bucket. Hands messy, hearts full. Get ready. Because the next chain was built on bringing people to the table. But these days, more and more are being told they don't belong inside. Number 6, Starbucks. What do you hold on to when even the smallest comforts, the ones that ask so little and give so much, begin to drift out of reach? For millions of older Americans, Starbucks wasn't about caffeine, it was about rhythm, a place to feel human, a table that didn't judge, a latte that cost $3 and a corner where time slowed down. For some, it was the only social hour of their week. Now, that familiar calm is quietly being priced out. In cities like New York or Los Angeles, a simple grande latte now runs between $6.75 to nearly $8. Add a seasonal drink or a pastry, and you're looking at a $20 receipt for 2 people. Business Insider reports that Starbucks is preparing yet another 8 to 12% price increase in quarter 3 of 2025. The reasons: rising Arabica coffee costs due to climate instability, expensive biodegradable packaging, and increased wages after unionization efforts. All understandable. But the result? A quiet erosion of community. For retirees on fixed incomes, Starbucks was the third space, the gentle middle ground between home and isolation. The barista who remembered your order, the familiar hum of espresso machines, a warm cup, and the morning paper. These weren't luxuries, they were anchors, and now they're being lifted, one price hike at a time. In New Jersey, a man in his late 60s used to come every Sunday. He never stayed long, just enough for his latte, his paper, and a brief chat about the weather. That ritual kept him tethered. But these days, he walks past. The chair is still empty. The window still fogs with steam. But he doesn't step inside. Not because he's changed, but because the place did. And as stores lean into app-only deals, cashless counters, and minimalist interiors, the message becomes harder to ignore. This space no longer sees you. It's for the fast, the young, the ones who can afford not to pause. So when even coffee, once the most accessible of comforts, becomes a barrier, what kind of mornings are we waking up to, and who's left standing outside, wondering when it all stopped being for them? Number 7. Taco Bell. What if the last affordable bite after midnight quietly slipped past $10 and nobody even noticed? For years, Taco Bell was more than food. It was a fallback. For night shift nurses, delivery drivers, and students pulling all-nighters, it was warmth at a time when everything else was closed. A $1 menu. $3 combo boxes, it meant something. Now that comfort is fading. In 2025, combo meals range from $9.89 to $12.50. CNBC confirms another price hike is coming up to 12% by late summer. Blame rising beef, cheese, imported vegetables, and costly new kitchen automation. For hourly workers, this change cuts deep. 2 tacos and a drink used to cost less than a gallon of gas. Now, it's a choice eat or drive home. People stand at the screen, squinting, calculating, and quietly walking away. No headlines, no protests, just dimmer drive-thrus and empty booths after dark. The $1 burrito that used to carry someone through the night gone, and if even Taco Bell no longer makes room for the working class, who will, and what does it mean when even survival food is priced out of reach? Number 8. Wendy's. What happens when a quiet, $4 lunch becomes a thing of the past, and even eating alone feels like something you have to earn? Wendy's once stood for value. The 4 for $4 deal was more than a bargain, it was reassurance. A burger, nuggets, fries, and a drink for the cost of a small coffee. For students between classes, retirees between errands, and office workers on tight budgets. It was the answer. That answer is fading. Today, basic combos cost between $9.50 to $12.75. Yahoo Finance reports that Wendy's plans another 12 to 15% price hike by the end of 2025. Rising beef and bread costs, menu upgrades, investments in ghost kitchens, all pushed forward by corporate strategy, none with ordinary customers in mind. For many, that shift cuts deeper than dollars. The people Wendy's once spoke to now feel ignored. A solo meal once filled with comfort is now a calculation: can I afford this and still refill my prescriptions, still drive to work when lunch becomes math, and fast food forgets who built it. The pain isn't just hunger, it's the feeling of no longer being welcome. Number 9. Domino's Pizza. What happens when the smell of hot pizza, once a symbol of Friday nights and family laughter, starts costing more than your week's groceries? Domino's used to be the affordable fallback. Medium pies for $5.99. 2 for $12 carryout deals, no coupons, no stress, just cheese, crust, and everyone at the table. Now that warmth has a price tag, a single medium pizza ranges from $12.99 to $17.49. Delivery fees, another $4.99 to $6.99, and according to Technomic, prices will rise another 7 to 10% by fall 2025. Pushed by cheese inflation, flour shortages, and costly investments in delivery apps and tracking tech. For working families, pizza night used to be simple, a treat after a long week. Now it's a calculation. $25 for one meal, or stretch that into groceries for 4 days. Parents are boiling pasta. Kids stop asking. The magic never shows up at the door. Domino's was never just about food. It was about shared joy, easy, warm, and always there. And when even that vanishes, so does a piece of what held families together. Number 10. Chick-fil-A. What happens when the one place that always felt calm, kind, and dependable starts inching out the very people who once made it thrive? Chick-fil-A wasn't just about chicken, it was about atmosphere, a clean booth, a warm my pleasure, a sandwich and fries for under $7 that reminded you good service still existed. Now, even that is slipping away. As of 2025, a basic combo costs between $11.75 to $13.50. CNBC confirms another 10% increase is expected in Q3, with chicken and oil prices rising, suburban rent spiking, and digital kitchen expansions underway. Customers are footing the bill. For retirees and low-income families, that change stings. The sandwich is the same, but the feeling isn't. It no longer says, "You belong here," it whispers. You'd better be able to afford it. Young families feel it too. What used to be a 40-minute Sunday treat now costs over $40 for just 3 meals. The food still fills you, but the warmth fades with every dollar added to the receipt, when even Chick-fil-A pulls away. It's not just lunch we're losing, it's the comfort of being seen. Number 11, Olive Garden. What do we lose when even a simple plate of pasta, once shared with love and laughter, becomes a financial strain too heavy to carry for years? Olive Garden was the working family's night out. Soft lighting, endless breadsticks. Hearty plates of pasta, it offered a touch of elegance without the guilt of overspending. It was where birthdays were celebrated, where couples toasted anniversaries, and where a modest meal still felt magical. But today, that magic costs more than many can spare. A dinner for 2. Once $30, now approaches $80 with tip. NBC News reports an expected 8 to 10% price hike by late 2025, citing rising costs of imported ingredients, higher server wages, and longer meal times that reduce revenue per table. The result, a quiet exit of the very people Olive Garden once served. Retirees hesitate. Families stall in the parking lot. That once easy yes to dinner out becomes a whisper. Maybe next time. Not because the food changed, but because the place no longer feels like it's meant for everyone, and if sharing a bowl of pasta now feels out of reach. What happens to the traditions built around it? It's bad word. Number 12, Denny's. What happens when even breakfast, the most basic, familiar, grounding meal of the day, becomes something you have to save up for? Denny's was never about luxury. It was about reliability, a place that caught you when everything else was closed or closed off. For decades. Denny's served as America's unofficial kitchen, truck drivers finishing long hauls, retirees greeting the sunrise over a pot of coffee, night shift nurses grabbing a warm bite before heading home, students huddled in booths with textbooks and too many refills. There was always a plate, a server who knew your name, and a sense that you didn't need to prove anything to belong there. But today, that feeling is fading fast. A breakfast that once cost $5.99 now sits above $13 in many locations. According to Forbes, Denny's is expected to raise prices another 6 to 8% across southern and midwestern states by late 2025. The causes are stacked. The price of eggs and dairy has surged. Flour is more expensive, and keeping doors open 24 hours requires higher labor costs as wages climb. The booth is still there, but fewer can afford to sit down. And what's quietly vanishing isn't just affordability, it's community. The people Denny's once championed are stepping back. Retirees now opt for toast at home. Overnight workers settle for gas station snacks. The jukebox is still glowing, but the booth beside it, the one that used to hold laughter, quiet tears, and late night stories, is now cold and empty. For countless Americans, Denny's was never just about food, it was about presence. A place where time softened and people felt seen. Now, it feels like another place quietly saying you're no longer our priority, when even pancakes at 5 a.m. become a financial burden, when coffee no longer flows without hesitation. We don't just lose a meal, we lose a moment of connection. A gentle pause in a hard life, a place where belonging didn't come with conditions, and if we can no longer afford the most basic shared breakfast, where do we go to remember who we are? These weren't just restaurants. They were bookmarks in our everyday lives. Pancakes after church with family, drive-through burgers eaten in silence after long shifts, a corner booth where no one judged your clothes, your bank balance, or your tired face just served you something warm, something real. For many, these places were the only pause in a hard week, the only time you didn't have to explain or apologize for wanting a meal you didn't have to cook. Now, the lights are still on. The signs still glow, but inside, something is missing. The laughter, the crowds, the feeling that everyone belonged, not because people stopped caring, but because they can no longer afford to show up. Prices climbed slowly, then suddenly, and one by one, the familiar names on our streets are disappearing. Not with sirens, not with headlines, but with soft, unnoticed goodbyes, an empty booth here, a locked door there, a place you meant to visit, but now it's gone. What we're losing isn't just food, it's the final scraps of connection, of tradition, of feeling human in a country where even $5 is now a question. So if you remember the $1.99 breakfast, the 2 for $5 burger, or just a place where your name was known, share this, quietly, while we still can.